Aliens dropped him on a death world. He built a civilization instead. Ethan Cross woke with a start, his body pressed against the cold, hard floor of a strange metal pod. The air was thick with a faint chemical scent, and he could feel the hum of machinery vibrating beneath him. Outside, he glimpsed a world unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering rock formations jutted into a dark orange sky, and strange plants with glowing leaves swayed in the distance, their movements eerily synchronized as if responding to an unseen rhythm. Panic threatened to rise, but he pushed it down. Fear was useful only if it made him think, not if it paralyzed him. He pulled himself up and examined his surroundings. The pod had a small compartment with a few tools and a ration pack, nothing else. No communication devices, no map, no instructions. The realization struck him with clarity. He had been placed here deliberately. Ethan remembered the last mission, a routine survey of uncharted planets, and then nothing. And now this. Whoever had dropped him here, it had been intentional. Stepping outside, the air burned his lungs. Protective gear was essential, but there was none. He could see mountains in the distance, with rivers of glowing liquid running down their sides. Strange insects with translucent wings darted above him, leaving trails of light. The land looked beautiful, almost mesmerizing, but he knew better. Everything in this environment had the potential to kill him, slowly or quickly. Yet as the first sparks of determination flickered within him, Ethan realized one thing. This planet might be dangerous, but it was not impossible. He began by walking slowly, testing the ground beneath him. The soil was oddly soft, almost spongy, and he noticed tiny plants growing in patches. They gave off a faint blue glow at their tips. Ethan bent down and examined one. It seemed harmless, almost fragile. He decided to taste a tiny piece. It was bitter but not toxic. He made a mental note. These plants might become a food source if he could figure out how to cultivate them. The first night was the hardest. Ethan had no shelter, and the temperature dropped drastically. The glowing plants gave off some light, but it was not enough to keep the shadows at bay. He used the materials from the pod to fashion a makeshift tent. He layered his ration packs and tools beneath him to form a small barrier against the chill. As he lay there staring at the alien sky, he thought about humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt. It was that thought that kept sleep at bay, replaced by a restless determination to survive. By morning, he was ready to explore. He started climbing the nearest ridge to get a better view of the terrain. From the top, he could see vast stretches of the planet, each part more challenging than the last. Rivers of glowing liquid, jagged cliffs, and fields of twisting plants that seemed to move like waves in a storm. Yet, even amidst the danger, he saw possibilities. There were sources of water, potential shelters, and materials that could be used for building. This world might have been designed to test him, but Ethan had never been one to shy away from a challenge. He spent the next few days carefully exploring the area around his landing site. He found a small cave with a steady stream of water running through it. The air inside was cooler and cleaner, and the cave could provide shelter from the harsh weather. Ethan decided to make it his base. Using rocks and the remains of the pod, he built a rudimentary workstation. He began experimenting with the strange plants, trying to identify which ones could be eaten safely and which ones could be used for other purposes. Some seemed to contain energy-rich sap, others emitted a soft light that could replace fire. Ethan's nights were filled with observation. He watched the planet's creatures, noting their behavior, patterns, and interactions. He realized that the ecosystem, though dangerous, was balanced in a way that could be studied and used. He began to design simple tools: a water filter using layers of rock and plant fibers, a container to store food, and even a system to capture and store the energy from the glowing plants. Every small victory brought a sense of achievement. a reminder that humanity had always thrived by using intelligence and creativity to overcome challenges. One morning, as he was testing a makeshift water collection system, he noticed unusual movements in the sky. Small metallic objects no larger than his hand hovered silently above him. They were drones observing him. At first he froze, unsure of their purpose. Then it became clear. He was not alone. Whoever had dropped him here was still watching. The thought could have caused fear, but Ethan felt something else: curiosity. He began to study the drones, noting their patterns, speed, and reactions. If they were meant to intimidate or control him, they had chosen the wrong person. Over the following weeks, Ethan's skills grew. He learned to cultivate the edible plants near the cave, creating a small garden that could sustain him. He developed simple machines using rocks, plants, and salvaged materials from the pod. He constructed a rudimentary wind-powered device to move water from the stream to his garden. The cave, once a shelter, became the heart of a small and growing system. Each day was filled with problem-solving, discovery, and creation. He found satisfaction in small achievements, in turning a hostile world into a livable one. Ethan also realized the importance of observation beyond survival. He began documenting the flora and fauna, their reactions to him and to each other. He noticed patterns: how the glowing plants turned toward geothermal vents, how small creatures worked together to move seeds, how weather patterns shifted around the mountains. He started building simple models, using rocks and sticks, to predict and harness natural resources. Each model worked better than the last, slowly transforming his understanding of the world from fear to knowledge. Months passed. The once foreign landscape became familiar. The glowing rivers no longer seemed threatening. He learned to harvest materials from them safely. The insects that once scared him became indicators of environmental conditions. The plants, creatures, and rocks all became pieces of a complex puzzle he was solving every day. And all the while, the drones watched, silently recording his progress. They had not interfered, but their presence was a constant reminder that his actions were being evaluated. Then, one evening, something extraordinary happened. While observing a section of the glowing river, Ethan noticed that his garden had started to flourish beyond expectation. The plants had adapted, growing taller and stronger, producing more energy than before. He realized he could accelerate this process by introducing minor changes, arranging the plants to maximize light absorption, using geothermal heat to stimulate growth, and combining certain plant saps to create natural fertilizers. It was the first time he felt truly in control, not just surviving but shaping the world. Ethan understood something fundamental: survival was only the beginning. Humans were not just creatures of instinct. They were creators, innovators, and problem solvers. The aliens who had dropped him here might have wanted to test his limits, but they had underestimated humanity. Where they saw a single human against impossible odds, he saw opportunity. Where they expected despair, he felt determination. By the end of the first year, Ethan had transformed the cave and surrounding area into a small but sustainable settlement. He had water, food, energy, and shelter. He had learned to observe, adapt, and innovate. The drones continued to watch, and Ethan considered them not as threats, but as a challenge. He knew that the next phase would not be survival alone, but building something greater, something that would turn this death world into a place of life, learning, and hope. Ethan stood at the edge of his garden one night, looking at the orange sky and glowing rivers. He felt the first true sense of accomplishment he had ever known. He was alone, on a world designed to kill, yet he had found a way to thrive. The thought brought a smile to his face. This was only the beginning. Humanity, he realized, did not just survive, it transformed, it created, it flourished. And Ethan Cross was living proof. Ethan Cross had spent a full year learning the rhythms of the death world. What had once been a place of fear and uncertainty had become his laboratory, his home, and his sanctuary. The cave that had protected him from storms now housed simple devices he had built: water filtration systems, small storage units for food, and mechanisms that drew energy from the glowing plants and the geothermal vents. Outside, his garden had expanded into carefully arranged terraces, each section designed to maximize sunlight and energy from the glowing rivers. Each day brought a new challenge, and each challenge was a chance to create, to improve, and to learn. The drones that had been watching him since his arrival moved more frequently now. Ethan noticed them hovering over specific sections of his garden or following him as he explored new areas. He had grown used to them, and he was no longer concerned. Instead, he saw them as a mirror of his own progress. If they were taking note, then his work mattered. One evening, he decided to test their reactions. He rearranged a section of the glowing plants into geometric patterns, carefully measuring how they reflected light and energy. The drones hovered closer, and he realized that they responded to order and efficiency, not destruction. This thought gave him an idea. Perhaps they could be useful, not just observers. Ethan's experiments in the following weeks focused on expansion. He began constructing basic structures using stone, plant fibers, and the lightweight metals salvaged from the pod. He designed shelters that could withstand the planet's harsh storms, with slanted roofs to let wind pass through and layers of glowing plants for insulation. He even devised a system of simple pulley mechanisms to transport water from the stream to his growing terraces. Each structure, each tool was a lesson in physics and design, but more importantly, a statement. Humans could thrive where others would see only death. One morning, as he surveyed his terraces, Ethan noticed a group of small, insect-like creatures approaching his settlement. They moved in unison, carrying small objects that seemed to match his garden's layout. At first, he was cautious, but then he realized they were interacting with the environment in a way that complemented his designs. Over days, he observed them carefully. They collected seeds, redistributed water, and even appeared to prune certain plants, acting almost as helpers in his growing ecosystem. Ethan adapted his systems to accommodate their work, creating channels and spaces that made their tasks easier. He had found collaborators in an unexpected form. Months passed, and the settlement continued to expand. Ethan constructed larger terraces, more efficient energy systems, and even a small library of notes and diagrams documenting every observation and invention. He realized that knowledge itself could be the most valuable tool, and he recorded every success and failure with precision. The planet's dangers were still present, but he had transformed fear into control, uncertainty into planning, and isolation into purpose. One evening, while monitoring the drones, Ethan noticed something unprecedented. A larger ship appeared in the sky, its hull shimmering with a light that seemed to bend and twist. The alien observers had returned. He expected a sense of dread, but instead he felt calm. He had prepared for this moment for months. The ship lowered, hovering above his settlement, and a panel opened, revealing a translucent projection of one of the aliens. It regarded him silently for a moment, then spoke in a melodic tone, the meaning conveyed directly to his mind. "You have adapted beyond expectation. We wish to understand." Ethan stepped forward, his confidence grounded in his year of survival and creation. He gestured to his settlement, to the terraces, the glowing plants, the insect-like helpers, and the systems he had built. "This is what humans do," he said simply. "We study, we adapt, we create. We don't just survive. We improve." The alien paused, as if analyzing the sincerity and truth in his words. Then it moved closer, projecting images of distant worlds and experiments. They had placed countless species on different planets to see who could thrive. Humans, it seemed, were an anomaly. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but capable of ingenuity beyond measure. Ethan smiled, but he did not boast. He simply showed them the settlement. He demonstrated how the terraces worked with the geothermal vents, how the glowing plants provided energy and light, and how the insect-like creatures integrated seamlessly into the ecosystem. He explained his designs in simple terms, emphasizing efficiency, observation, and adaptation. The aliens listened, silent but attentive, recording every detail. It was clear that they had never seen anything like this. A human taking a world designed to kill and turning it into a place of life. Days passed, and the alien presence remained, observing and occasionally communicating with Ethan. But he did not let their scrutiny halt his progress. If anything, it motivated him to push further. He began designing more advanced systems, automated irrigation channels, storage silos for surplus food, and even simple machines that could perform tasks too complex for him alone. The settlement grew beyond the cave and terraces, expanding into the surrounding plains and valleys. Each improvement was a message to the universe. Humans could take what seemed impossible and make it thriving. Ethan also explored deeper philosophical questions. What did it mean to create a civilization? Was it just survival, or was it cooperation, culture, and knowledge? He experimented with communication methods for the insect-like creatures, teaching them simple signals to perform tasks more efficiently. He began planning a system of signs and symbols, a language for organizing the settlement and conveying ideas across space. It was the first step toward a culture, a society built not just on necessity, but on understanding and shared purpose. Then came a moment of pure triumph. A storm, larger than any he had seen, approached from the northern mountains. The wind tore across the plains and lightning cracked the sky. Yet when the storm arrived, his settlement stood firm. The terraces held the soil, the shelters protected his supplies, and the energy systems continued to function. The alien drones observed, hovering above, and Ethan felt a surge of pride. Not in himself alone, but in humanity's ability to take knowledge, foresight, and creativity, and use them to overcome challenges that would overwhelm any other species. After the storm, the aliens finally spoke more clearly. They projected a series of messages that conveyed astonishment and curiosity. This is beyond our expectations. You have not merely survived, you have created. You have demonstrated foresight, adaptation, and innovation at levels we have never observed in any species. Ethan nodded. That's what humans do, he replied. We find solutions, we create systems, and we never stop learning. This world was meant to kill me, but I chose to make it live. The aliens extended an offer. They wanted to integrate his knowledge into broader experiments across galaxies, to observe how humans could influence and improve alien ecosystems. Ethan considered it carefully. It was an opportunity to expand humanity's influence, to take lessons learned on this death world and apply them elsewhere. But he also knew that true civilization was more than experiments and observation. It was growth, adaptation, and culture. He agreed, but on one condition. The insects, the terraces, the systems he had built, they were not just tools. They were part of a world he had nurtured, and he would ensure they continued to thrive on their own. With their approval, Ethan continued his work. The alien ship provided tools, resources, and knowledge that accelerated the settlement's growth, but all designs remained his own. The terraces expanded into complex irrigation networks, energy from glowing plants powered automated devices, and communication systems allowed him to organize tasks across the settlement with efficiency and precision. The once dead planet had transformed into a vibrant ecosystem, a testament to human ingenuity and persistence. Months later, as he looked over the settlement from a ridge, Ethan reflected on the journey. He had arrived alone, with nothing but a pod, a few tools, and human determination. Now, The valley below teemed with life, systems worked seamlessly, and even the alien observers seemed to regard the world with awe. The death world had been conquered not by force but by intelligence, creativity, and relentless perseverance. Ethan smiled. Humanity had always been underestimated, and yet time and again it had proved capable of miracles. He had not just survived, he had created. A civilization had risen from the most impossible of places, and he knew with certainty that this was only the beginning. If humans could thrive here, on a world designed to kill, there was no limit to what they could achieve. The orange sky glowed above him, and the rivers of light reflected his own determination. Somewhere, deep in the galaxy, aliens were observing, recording, and learning from him. And Ethan knew one thing for certain. Humanity was a force that could not be contained, a species that turned death into life, chaos into order, and isolation into civilization. On this death world, a new story had begun, one of hope, creativity, and the unstoppable spirit of humans. Ethan Cross stood on the ridge, gazing at the settlement that had grown far beyond what he had first imagined. The terraces stretched across the valley, glowing plants reflecting light into every corner, and the insect-like helpers moved efficiently, performing their tasks with purpose. The once dead world now hummed with life, energy, and order. Yet, for Ethan, this was not the end. Civilization, he knew, was not just about survival or organization. It was about innovation, culture, and preparing for the future. With the alien observers still hovering above in their shimmering ships, Ethan began to plan the next phase of the settlement. He wanted to ensure that the civilization he was building could grow even if he were not there to guide it. His first task was education. He devised a system of symbols, diagrams, and patterns that could be understood by the insect-like helpers. He used the glowing plants to display messages, creating a simple form of communication that could convey instructions and ideas across the terraces. Over time, he observed the helpers learning and adapting, showing signs of memory and problem-solving. They were no longer just assistants, they were participants in a growing society. Ethan then turned to agriculture. The terraces were producing food reliably, but he wanted diversity. He experimented with cross-pollination of the glowing plants and the edible shrubs, discovering new combinations that were more nutritious, more resilient, and more efficient at harnessing sunlight. Each new plant was a small triumph, proof that life could be enhanced through observation, creativity, and careful experimentation. He recorded every success in his growing library, filling pages with diagrams, notes, and patterns that would guide the settlement for years to come. The alien observers began to communicate more frequently. They projected complex schematics and environmental data, providing Ethan with knowledge about advanced materials and energy systems. Rather than simply handing him solutions, they challenged him to integrate the ideas with his existing systems. Ethan welcomed this challenge. With careful thought, he adapted alien concepts to his own designs, building structures that harvested wind and geothermal energy more efficiently, and storing it for use during the planet's long nights. He had become a bridge between human ingenuity and alien technology, creating a hybrid civilization that was both practical and advanced. As the settlement expanded, Ethan realized that community was more than shared tasks, it was culture. He introduced patterns of organization, assigning specific areas for experimentation, observation, and innovation. He built spaces where ideas could be exchanged, using the glowing plants and reflective surfaces to convey messages across distances. The insect-like helpers responded, moving in coordinated ways that suggested understanding and planning. Slowly, a sense of order and purpose permeated the settlement. Life was no longer just survival, it was creation, collaboration, and growth. One day, while exploring a distant ridge, Ethan discovered a cluster of natural caves that had remained untouched. They were cooler, sheltered from storms, and contained rare minerals that could be used in construction. He brought these discoveries back to the settlement, mapping the caves and integrating them into his plans. Soon, the caves became storage areas, laboratories, and living quarters for the insect-like helpers. Each discovery reminded him of the potential hidden in every corner of this world, waiting for those willing to observe, understand, and act. With infrastructure in place, Ethan focused on sustainability. He developed systems to recycle water and nutrients, ensuring that the settlement could thrive without external resources. Waste materials were repurposed into building materials or energy sources. He even began experimenting with natural pest control, studying the ecosystem to maintain balance without disrupting the flow of life. Every day was a lesson, every challenge an opportunity to refine his systems. He took pride not just in survival, but in creating a world where life could flourish indefinitely. Months turned into years. Ethan's settlement had transformed into a thriving micro-civilization. The glowing terraces covered entire valleys, water flowed efficiently through carefully designed channels, and insect-like helpers had developed advanced coordination, almost resembling a workforce. The alien observers frequently hovered above, studying the results of Ethan's work. They had expected struggle, maybe even failure, but instead they witnessed innovation, collaboration, and growth. Humanity, they realized, could transform environments in ways no other species could. Despite the settlement's success, Ethan knew that civilization needed more than food, shelter, and energy. It needed knowledge, art, and culture. He began experimenting with patterns in light and reflection, creating displays that told simple stories. The insect-like helpers responded, learning to replicate sequences, and soon the terraces became not just functional spaces, but canvases for expression. Ethan understood that culture was a form of identity, a way for a civilization to endure beyond the individual. He encouraged creativity, observation, and experimentation in every corner of the settlement. Then came the moment that would change everything. The alien observers arrived in full force, their ships forming a formation above the valley. Ethan had anticipated their return, but even he was surprised by the scale of the visit. A projection of a council of aliens appeared, larger and more detailed than before. They conveyed a single, clear message. Humanity's ability to adapt, innovate, and create on a death world was unprecedented. They had observed countless species across the galaxy, but none had demonstrated the combination of creativity, resilience, and culture that humans possessed. They wanted to learn from Ethan and share his methods with other worlds. Ethan listened carefully. He felt a surge of pride, but he also remained humble. He understood that his work was not just about impressing observers, it was about building something lasting. He invited the aliens to witness the full extent of the settlement. The terraces, the energy systems, the communication networks, and the flourishing ecosystem. He demonstrated how knowledge and observation had guided every design, every decision, and how collaboration between humans, helpers, and the environment had produced a thriving civilization. The aliens observed silently, recording everything with precision and curiosity. Over the next months, Ethan worked closely with the aliens. He shared insights about human problem-solving, adaptation, and creative thinking. He learned about alien ecosystems, energy systems, and advanced technologies. Together, they began experimenting with ways to enhance the settlement even further, always maintaining harmony with the planet's natural balance. Ethan realized that true civilization was not just about survival or efficiency. It was about cooperation, innovation, and respect for the environment. He had created a model that could serve as a blueprint for countless other worlds. Ethan also reflected on the future. He knew that humanity could achieve more than mere survival. They could create thriving civilizations, even in the most hostile environments. He began planning for expansion, designing new terraces, energy systems, and communication networks that could reach beyond the valley. He experimented with methods to cultivate new species of plants and introduce them without disrupting the ecosystem. Every step was deliberate, every design aimed at growth, sustainability, and cultural development. One evening, as the twin suns of the planet set, Ethan stood at the highest ridge overlooking the settlement. The terraces glowed with life, the helpers moved in coordinated patterns, and the alien ships hovered silently above. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had arrived alone, on a planet designed to kill, with only determination and human ingenuity to guide him. Now, he had built more than a settlement. He had built a civilization, a testament to what humans could achieve when faced with impossible odds. Ethan thought about the aliens watching him. They had expected to witness struggle, maybe failure, but instead, they had seen creation, innovation, and growth. Humanity had turned a death world into a thriving ecosystem, and in doing so, had demonstrated something far greater than survival: the ability to transform, adapt, and flourish. Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. Humans were not limited by the worlds they were given. They were limited only by their imagination, creativity, and determination. As night fell, the settlement shimmered with light from the glowing plants, reflecting in the calm waters of the terraces. The insect-like helpers moved gracefully, performing tasks with efficiency and care. The alien observers projected faint light over the valley, studying, recording, and perhaps learning. Ethan stood silently, taking it all in. He felt a deep connection to this world, to life, and to humanity itself. The planet had once been a place of death, but now it was a place of possibility, of hope, and of enduring creation. Ethan smiled. Humanity had survived worse, and it had always risen higher. He had not just survived, he had created a civilization from nothing. And as he looked toward the stars, he knew that humans would continue to adapt, innovate, and thrive wherever they went. The death world was no longer a threat. It was proof of human potential, a living testament to resilience, creativity, and the unstoppable spirit of humanity. Ethan Cross stood at the edge of the highest ridge in his settlement, the wind brushing past him, carrying scents of the glowing plants below. From here, the terraces stretched endlessly, a living map of his work. The once dead world now pulsed with energy, harmony, and life, but Ethan felt the stirrings of a new challenge. Civilization, he realized, was not a static thing. It needed growth, innovation, and vision. The world that had tested him for so long had become a partner in creation, yet he understood that there was still more to achieve. He began the day by visiting the outer terraces, where he had recently planted experimental crops. These were hybrids designed to be stronger, more nutritious, and more efficient at absorbing the planet's unusual energy. Each plant was a lesson in adaptation. He checked the irrigation channels and energy collectors, noting small inefficiencies and thinking of ways to improve them. He had learned that perfection was not a single state. It was continuous refinement, observation, and adjustment. Even small changes could have big effects on growth and stability. As he worked, the insect-like helpers moved in precise patterns, carrying tools, adjusting plants, and monitoring energy collectors. Their coordination had reached a level that almost resembled intelligence. Ethan had spent years teaching them through patterns, signals, and repetition. Now, they understood tasks not just individually, but as part of the broader ecosystem. He watched one helper gently redirect a plant vine towards sunlight, a task it had never performed before, and realized that collaboration could extend even beyond what he could directly instruct. Civilization, he thought, was as much about teaching and guidance as it was about creating systems. In the mid-afternoon, the alien observers returned in a formation larger than any before. The shimmering ships cast a soft glow over the valley, reflecting on the glowing terraces. Ethan had grown accustomed to their presence, but today he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had watched his work, recorded patterns, and communicated insights. Now he intended to show them the next step, not just survival, not just thriving, but innovation that could influence other worlds. He began demonstrating new machines he had built. One was a water purification and distribution system, entirely automated, that could sustain large areas without manual intervention. Another used reflective surfaces and glowing plant energy to create light and heat for new terraces in darker valleys. Each design combined alien concepts with human ingenuity, resulting in systems that were simple, effective, and adaptable. The aliens observed silently, recording, and their movements suggested curiosity, a sense of wonder even in beings accustomed to advanced technology. Ethan then turned his attention to communication. He had developed patterns of light and symbols across the terraces, allowing the insect-like helpers to coordinate tasks over long distances. Today, he extended the system to include signs for experimentation, teaching, and alerts about environmental changes. The helpers responded quickly, adjusting their tasks based on signals and demonstrating coordination that was far beyond instinctual behavior. Ethan realized that he was witnessing the early stages of a society capable of self-organization and innovation, a true civilization on a world that had once sought to destroy him. The alien observers initiated direct communication for the first time, projecting not just images but environmental data from other worlds. They asked questions, not in words but through shared understanding. How did humans adapt so quickly? How could a single individual create systems that rivaled their own collective knowledge? Ethan explained simply. Humans observed, learned, and applied knowledge constantly. Survival was not enough. Creativity and collaboration drove improvement. He demonstrated how he had integrated environmental patterns, plant behavior, and natural energy flows into every aspect of the settlement. The aliens processed the information, projecting sequences and comparisons that Ethan studied closely. He realized this interaction was mutual learning. He was teaching them about human adaptability while absorbing alien insights. As weeks passed, Ethan expanded the settlement into previously untouched valleys. He built new terraces, planted experimental crops, and introduced energy networks that connected multiple zones. The insect-like helpers coordinated tasks across these distances, learning to adjust to changing conditions, and even innovating small solutions of their own. Ethan documented every change, every observation, and every success. His library of knowledge grew, not just as a record but as a foundation for future generations. Civilization, he thought, was cumulative. Each discovery, each improvement added to the collective potential. One morning, while exploring a nearby canyon, Ethan discovered rare mineral formations that could be used as catalysts in energy conversion systems. He brought samples back to the settlement, experimenting with different ways to integrate them into the glowing plant energy collectors. The results were astonishing. Energy efficiency increased, light output became more consistent, and the system required less maintenance. The terraces now glowed brighter, and the ecosystem responded positively. Even the alien observers projected a display of what appeared to be admiration. Ethan realized that innovation on a death world was not just about survival. It was about shaping possibilities, creating systems that could endure and thrive in harmony with nature. Ethan also began experimenting with forms of social interaction among the helpers. Using light patterns and movement sequences, he encouraged coordination that resembled play, training, and collaborative problem-solving. The helpers adapted quickly, showing awareness of each other's actions and adjusting behavior accordingly. The system he had built now functioned almost autonomously, with the helpers maintaining balance in the settlement, planting new crops, monitoring energy flows, and alerting him to anomalies. Civilization, he understood, was not static. It evolved, and he had laid the groundwork for growth beyond himself. Months later, the Alien Council returned for what Ethan sensed was an important evaluation. They hovered over the settlement, projecting a holographic map that compared his systems with other planetary experiments they had conducted. They conveyed admiration and, more importantly, curiosity. Humans had taken a death world and created an ecosystem that was not just surviving but thriving and innovating. Ethan had shown that intelligence, creativity, and adaptability could surpass even advanced technology. His work would become a benchmark, a model for other civilizations across the galaxy. Ethan spoke to the aliens calmly, his words carrying the essence of human determination. This world was never meant to be ours, yet we observed, adapted, and created. Civilization is not just about surviving. It is about learning, improving, and collaborating. We take challenges as opportunities and turn obstacles into systems that sustain life. That is what humans do. The aliens processed this, and their lights shimmered as though acknowledging the truth in his statement. They began projecting knowledge and tools to further expand the settlement, but Ethan ensured that every innovation maintained harmony with the planet's environment. Creation, he reminded himself, was not just about efficiency, it was about balance. In the following months, Ethan implemented advanced energy grids, automated irrigation, and systems to predict environmental changes. He introduced new plants that enhanced biodiversity and stability. The helpers adapted to these changes, coordinating across larger distances and managing tasks that would have been impossible for a single individual alone. The settlement had grown into a self-sustaining civilization, one that could endure even without Ethan's constant supervision. Yet he continued to innovate, refine, and expand, driven by the belief that growth and improvement had no limits. As he stood one night atop the ridge, gazing at the glowing terraces, Ethan felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The death world that had once threatened to end him had become a symbol of human potential. Civilization was not defined by the challenges of the environment, but by how beings responded to those challenges. He had demonstrated that intelligence, creativity, and collaboration could turn the impossible into reality. The alien observers projected a final message, acknowledging the achievement. Humanity has exceeded all expectations. Your civilization is a model of adaptability, innovation, and resilience. You have proven that life can flourish even where it was thought impossible. Ethan smiled, knowing that this was not just recognition. It was validation of a philosophy that humans had carried across millennia. To adapt, to create, and to thrive, even in the harshest conditions, was the essence of his species. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Ethan looked over the valley, the glowing plants reflecting light across the terraces and the helpers moving efficiently below. The settlement hummed with life, a living testament to human ingenuity. Civilization had taken root, and its growth was only beginning. Ethan knew that this world would continue to evolve, guided by observation, creativity, and collaboration. Humans had proven that even in the harshest conditions, life could not only survive but flourish. He thought about the future. Beyond this planet, beyond the aliens' experiments, there were countless worlds waiting. Each would pose its own challenges, each a potential death world. Yet humanity had shown that limits were illusions. With observation, creativity, and collaboration, humans could thrive anywhere. And wherever they went, they would bring with them not just survival but civilization itself, knowledge, culture, innovation, and hope. Ethan turned away from the ridge and walked toward the heart of the settlement. The terraces glowed softly, Helpers moved in coordinated patterns, and the wind carried the scent of life, growth, and possibility. This world had been transformed, not by strength, not by force, but by intelligence, perseverance, and vision. And in that moment, Ethan understood the most important lesson of all. Humans were never meant to simply exist. They were meant to create, to inspire, and to leave a mark wherever they went.